This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by The Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I will be your host. I'm a fire officer up in Wisconsin. I also contribute to Fire Rescue One. I've written a couple articles for the wonderful person that is with me. I like to call her the commander, Janelle Fosquet, the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One. And before I ask how you're doing, Commander, I think we should really call this today's show should be Better Every Semester. Better every study session, because today's theme, we have one of our favorite guests back with us to talk about continuing education and always working on self-improvement. But before we get to our guest, how are you, Commander? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for today's show. This is a special one for us, which we'll reveal why in just a second.
Yeah. So back with us, Dr. and Chief Reggie Freeman, who was our very third guest, and now he's number 124. Dr. Freeman, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here. Did you ever think we'd still be going 100 plus shows later?
Absolutely. That's what happens when you have a quality show. You can't stop. It just grows and gets better and better. So truly an honor and privilege to be back with you all. Zam, you and Janelle, you're phenomenal, and absolutely love this platform and actually thank all of our listeners for their contributions as well as their commitment to the podcast.
We started off as this little misfit movement, and I like to say that we still are the misfits just because of our the collective, our attitudes towards that self-improvement. And you were a big part and instrumental on me personally after our first interview. And we'll get into that a little bit. Before we do that, man, you've been very busy. You're currently the executive director of fire and EMS for NEOM in Saudi Arabia. But previously you served as a fire chief for the city of Oakland, California, Hartford, Connecticut Fire Department, Lockheed Martin Aeronautics. You're adjunct professor for multiple higher learning institutions, and that'll come up again in our conversation today. You're board of directors for NFPA, CPSE. You're a fellow for the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. You have your doctorate in emergency and protective services. And again, probably with all that, one of the most distinguished things is you were the third guest on the Better Every Shift podcast.
That's right. That's what's most important. Absolutely.
100%.
So how have you been over this? It's been 2+ years since you've been on the show, and obviously you're doing some pretty innovative things, continuing obviously your own education and really pushing out that message. You always have been. But how are things going now? And tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Thank you so much, Sam. Things have been wonderful. I can't complain. It's really been a fairy tale up to this point. Every day is a new opportunity to make a difference and to really, really make not only people better, but then also processes. And when you make processes better, the entire organization can thrive. And that's what's so exciting about this opportunity in NEOM. So NEOM is in the northwest corner of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's truly a world-class effort. Several thousand employees are here to build this wonderful and futuristic city. And so to have the honor and the privilege to be the executive director of fire and EMS for NEOM is truly humbling. It's truly humbling. And so when you think about what the future fire service looks like, whether it be firefighters using drones to fight fire, autonomous equipment, you have also firefighters wearing jetpacks. If you can dream it, it can become a reality here at NEOM. So just to have that opportunity is certainly mind-blowing for me, and we take advantage of that opportunity here, my team and I, at NEOM every single day.
Well, you talk about dream it. I want to just go back a little bit about, you're your experience, you started, how long have you been in the fire service now? We have it down on our
24
show.
years.
24, right?
Yeah, 24.
Where did you start again? And your story was pretty compelling because, I mean, you came through and you were bullied a little bit, right? When you first started in the fire service, I would say you were bullied.
Sure.
But your attitude towards that, and if you would just recap a little bit about that, because that was motivating for me to hear.
Yeah, no, so no, I appreciate it. And, as I, whether it's speaking at conferences, keynotes, on occasion, I tell the story, and it's very, for me, I wouldn't change a thing. Was it very difficult and challenging? Absolutely. Absolutely it was. But for me, I look at it as an opportunity, and it builds character. And so my career started February 19th, 2001 in the state of Mississippi. And even a lot of my friends and colleagues, as we're having conversations like, oh yeah, Reggie, you're from Mississippi. With all due respect to Mississippi, I hail from the great state of Louisiana, the home of gumbo and etouffee, and even my very mediocre at times since 2009, New Orleans Saints. But,
Okay.
but my career started there, and that really led me to a path of where I'm at today. I've been a quote change agent fire chief, and what I have loved to had risen through the ranks with a metro department, one of the metro departments I've led before in the past, absolutely. But that wasn't my past. That wasn't my path. That was not my destiny. And so those challenges and those troubles, it really, really put me in a position to where I focused on what I wanted to do in the fire service. And that was, number one, be people oriented and service before self. And also put myself in a position to where the way that I was treated, no one under my command would ever have to worry about being treated that way. So I don't care where you're from. I don't care your gender. I don't care who you choose to love, what religion you choose to practice. When you wear that uniform, when that patch is on your shoulder, that badge is on your chest, it is all about the mission. And we're all fire service brothers, sisters, and family. And that's what I have held true to form throughout my entire 24-year career. 24 years in the fire service, and roughly 17 of those 24, I've had the honor and privilege to serve as a chief. So, that experience, I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And having the mentality that there cannot be a fire chief or a fire department without firefighters, which means in essence, you have to take care of the boots. And, if anyone were ever to ask me, what's been your secret to success throughout your career? It's that. It's making sure that you recognize and acknowledge the most critical person in the fire department, which is the firefighter, and the most important, who's the company officer. And I say it's the company officer because the company officer, they have extended authority from the chief's office. So they're on the piece, they're in the firehouse 24/7 with the team who's actually doing the work. And so they're holding the line. It's their job to ensure that first and foremost, that the personnel are safe. They have everything they need to execute their duties and responsibilities. But more importantly, they don't feel as if they are an employee or an employee number. They are a valuable team and or family member. And so that's what I've held true throughout my entire career, and the message that I try to convey to everyone throughout the organization, because I don't care how many bugles that you have on your collar, or excuse me, trumpets, how many trumpets, if we're going to be fire service proper, that you have in your collar. Everyone and anyone can exercise leadership. You don't have to have a title or official rank to do that.
That's so great, Chief. And I love that mindset. And we can talk about this kind of at this abstract level, but then there's the very individual level, and you talk about being a change agent. And we have proof here on the show of the difference that a single person can make. And in this case, you, in that third episode that we did, inspiring Zam, who is now fairly newly promoted company officer, was not a company officer right when we first launched the podcast. So that's been a big change. But we are really, really proud to share some news actually, Zam, I'll let you share the news, and then we'll talk about Chief Freeman's role in all of this. But
You mean
proof of the change agent.
we're an award-winning podcast?
Well, that too.
From the
That
IFF.
is that too, of course.
Is that what you're getting to?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll thank you, Janelle, and Chief. One of the fitting reasons we're having you back on is I remember you saying that you went through your hardships. People maybe weren't as necessarily fair to you, and you saw some of the unjust that was going on throughout the fire service. And your attitude was, I'm not going to get back at those people. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to push back. I'm going to push forward. And personally, what I'm going to do is be the best version of myself. So that meant learning everything you could about the fire service, going back to school a couple of different times to get more education. And that kind of fired me up a little bit. I think in my mind, and I vividly remember us having the conversation in that episode where you kind of made it a point. You're like, because I said, I wanted to go back to maybe get my master's. And you kind of just said, well, what's stopping you? I had a family, kids, and this situation, I went back to get my doctorate. So, and so you said it in a very, a very compelling way. And my firefighter mind, with the devil on the shoulder went, yeah, what's stopping you, you idiot? Just, you have all the contacts and time in the world. So, a couple of weeks after our episode, I registered for Columbia Southern University and started my master's, my MBA in entrepreneurship. The other part of that was in our conversation, I said I didn't want to do fire and EMS management or fire services because I felt like, there's a lot of people doing that. That's very valid. But to me, I kind of think a little differently about how we can improve the fire service. And you said, well, just do something that, you want, whatever you do. And I think I mentioned entrepreneurship, and you said, oh, that nails what we need in the fire service. So, from our third episode to, I think, a couple of weeks ago, I went back to school. And so I got my MBA in entrepreneurship from Columbia Southern, and you had a lot to do with that challenge. So I thought, well, fitting that we bring him back. So thank you
the air horns.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. Fireworks. That is awesome.
Yeah,
congrats,
awesome.
Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, congratulations, big congrats. And I think, Zam, I think it's just very quickly important for us to hit on the fact that in the fire service, we're blue collar, right? We're blue collar, and there's absolutely no replacement for experience. And for quite some time, and let me back up a little bit. For the first time in history, we have 4, if not 5 generations in the workplace. It's never happened before. So there's no empirical articles, there's no research that you can pull and read to quote unquote help you manage these multiple different generations in the workplace, right? So more senior or tenured fire service members, they're going to really, really hone in and dial in on the experience piece, which again is, in my opinion, the most important. And but when you think about competency, right, and the word itself and what it means, for me, if someone is truly competent, you have to have not only the experience, but also the training and the education. But most importantly, you have to be able to apply it. If you're just a paper chief or a paper company officer or a paper firefighter, but you do not know how to apply those skills, you're not going to be an effective emergency responder or a professional firefighter, or even volunteer or a combination paid on call firefighter. But it is so important to recognize the fact that education helps us in the fire service. For the longest time, we were not looked at as professionals in the eyes of municipal government leadership, whether it be city or county. The police chiefs were, right? Or senior officers in law enforcement were. Other professionals within city government, whether it be public works or social services, health and human services, they're looked at as professionals. But that education piece, that's what really helps us put us over the top. And with your degree, your MBA in entrepreneurship, as you already stated, there's so many different ways that's applicable to the fire service. And we get that experience, and hats off to the Bachelor of Science Fire Administration or Fire Science programs. I support those programs 100%. I just want everyone to know that you don't have to pursue those degrees to be competent or even climb the organizational ladder within your respective organization. An MBA, I mean, for me, I've managed $300 million budgets, and a fire science degree is not going to help me manage a $300 million budget.
Yeah.
And so, but a Bachelor of Administration or a business administration degree would, or a Master's of Business Administration degree would. So it's very much applicable. So hats off to you. Congrats on having the courage to step outside of that box and pursue something that you are passionate about, which is 100% applicable to the fire service.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being the proverbial boot.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
And you know, and we were talking behind, you know, the scenes, and you had brought forth like one of the I think most grateful pieces that you've experienced in the fire service is maybe hearing that. If you would elaborate on that a little bit, I thought that was a really you know, kind of telling part of your journey and just what you stand for when you're explaining that.
No, absolutely. So, you know, I've been asked on a few different occasions, and one time here recently, you know, so Reggie, what's the highlight of your career? What's given you the most satisfaction throughout your career? If you had one thing to say that you were successful because you did X, Y, Z, what would it be? And for me, it's about helping people. It's about being there, being able to help people accomplish their goals, their dreams. And it doesn't matter if that is guiding them with their promotion. You know, if they don't have a reading list within their department, you know, sharing some ideas on some literature they can pull off the shelves, or what they can pull from Fire Rescue One or some other fire service related genre, to be able to get them adequately prepared for that test. But also, even with the degrees, I mean, there's so many different programs out there, and I'll just use the Naval Postgraduate School as an example. You know, so when I get these emails from Heather Issaran, who's one of the points of contacts at the Naval Postgraduate School, and for those who aren't familiar with it, it's in Monterey, based in Monterey, California. And for any law enforcement official in the U.S. or fire service official, or even active duty, or I believe even a reserve U.S. military personnel, you can pursue your master's degree with a focus on Homeland Security, and at no cost. So there's an application process. It's more of a scholarship. It's very, very competitive. I believe the degree is worth over $100,000 when it's all said and done, from the actual fees and the equipment that they give you, the travel, et cetera. They cover all expenses. And if you commit and dedicate yourself to it, you'll graduate with a master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School. So I've been fortunate to personally send out the email to the department and state, here's the application for Naval Postgraduate School. It's open till X date. If you apply and if you're accepted, I will cover your time as the chief. You will not have to use vacation. Also, they have other professional development courses that they offer that's not an actual degree, but such as emerging leaders, for example. And if you apply for that and you get accepted, we'll cover your time. And I'm so proud to say we've had several people that have been accepted to the master's degree program, several people that's been accepted into the emerging leaders program. There's also different scholarships through different colleges, universities that I've been affiliated with, to where they apply and they will get this degree for free once they go through the application process. Again, very, very competitive, because they only have so many free scholarships. They've gotten their master's degree for free. The Executive Fire Officer Program, I've had folks that's never even heard of the National Fire Academy at one department that I was at, a metro department, and we opened up the doors. We started sending people to the National Fire Academy to get their Managing Fire Officer credential or certification, as well as the Executive Fire Officer Program, getting accepted into that. So that is really the highlight of my career, is helping people accomplish their goals, because I've had help. I've had several people help me from the moment I joined the fire service to present day. They're still my mentors. And if I have a question or problem or just want to bounce something off of them, they're always there to help. So we all need help at some juncture. And so I feel like I'm just doing my part, and it's it's the greatest feeling in the world to hear success stories such as yours. And I feel if we all did that, not only would the fire service be a better place for us to come to work and serve every day, but so would the world, just as regular citizens.
That's so great. And you were the catalyst. You planted the seed, got Zam thinking, huge motivating factor. But Zam, I want to ask you, what was that like at the next step? Like, did you start asking around with your friends and family, your department leaders? How did you then take that initial catalyst motivating factor and make it a reality? What was that like building support for you?
Oh, it was actually fairly easy from a standpoint of, I'm a systems person, and I think Chief, you are a lot of times too, right? We have to have our systems in place, and that was another thing that we talked about. And I thought, well, if I just dedicate time at the firehouse instead of going and sitting in the leathers after dinner, I'd always hop on the treadmill, walk, and I'd read, and then I'd be on the computer and I'd be doing papers at night. And just going through that system, over and over again. And it didn't take too much. I shouldn't say it didn't take too much time and effort. It just took, um, I just had to be really disciplined with it. And as I, would be upstairs studying, what's really interesting, and Chief, you'll love this, is that, right now my crew, I have another member of my crew that's going back to school. Just started at CSU, another one who's studying for promotion, and then a third that is going to start. So
Excellent.
and you know why that happens is you get going, and I think there's so many people that want to continue. They just need that boot, and I'm trying to be that boot now that you were for me. And so once I got my systems in place, and it's very evident because my very first class was a B, and then I'm really happy to say that after that I figured out what I had to do. And week one was usually an introduction, week two was a discussion, week three was a big project, week four was a lecture, and you kind of just get through that system and set yourself up. And family then starts to know, well, do you have a paper to do? Significant others and those around you, they're like, I know you need time to go do your paper, to do research. Um, and I was talking about with my mom and dad, and my brother is highly successful in the financial field. And so he's done like series 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. I don't know how many he's got now. But I have a master's now, and that's the highest education level, I believe, of anyone on my side of the family. And that's pretty darn cool, right?
That's
Mom and
awesome.
dad are blue collar. So I feel like I've been able to pay it forward. And, Chief mentioned that there's a lot of organizations out there that are helping. Since my kind of involvement with the masters and with the Better Every Shift program, and kind of being inspired by Dr. Freeman, our good friend Chief Randy Brugman recommended me to be on the Arthur J. Gladfelder Scholarship Committee, and I'm happy to say that scholarship has just been launched, and we'll leave a link to that, where anyone who's going back for higher education in the fire service can qualify for $500 to $1,000 to go towards their education. And it is a very simple process. I'd like to think that I helped with the simple process thing, because I was like, hey, as a firefighter, you need a QR code and you need like a page and a half. And so I believe that if anybody's listening to this, they will get some money from that scholarship. And also I believe there are links that will just describe about what Arthur J. Gladfelder has done for the fire service. I think that's very important to remember.
Absolutely.
And we'll leave those links on, but Chief has hit it right on the head. There are resources there. As a matter of fact, there's a lot, even I know the IEFF and the IFC start to have, they're looking for people to give some scholarships to. And it's not because I don't believe that there's a lot of us in the fire service that aren't continuing our education. It's just, we are the type that go, all right, I'm in it. Let's go. Because I know that's how I was. I was like, all right, Chief gave me the boot. I have the information. I'm starting. I'm just going to go. And so, it's going to, one of the things that I think will be really cool, and I'm putting this out there to our listeners, is I want to hear someone who said, hey, Zam, I started because I listened to you and Chief Freeman, and I took advantage of the scholarship, and now I have my associates, my masters, my bachelor's, whatever it is. Because I'm in the same boat as Chief Freeman is. It's really cool to be part of something bigger than yourself and improving the fire service.
And Zam, that's a wonderful point. I just want to, quickly give a shout out to the IFF and their leadership from Ed Kelly to Frank Lima, and even my dear friend Josh Smith. He's assigned to headquarters in DC. Dear friend of mine. Their support of higher education and talking about its importance and even professional credentialing has been phenomenal for the fire service. So I certainly thank the IFF and their leadership for making the fire service better, because they have really been a crucial point in us making the turn around, really combining or acknowledging the fact that experience is critically important, but also is education as well as professional credentialing. So hats off to the IFF leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I just want to jump back, Zam, with the a lot of people, I think, when they're on the fence or they're not sure about whether or not this is the right path for them, they're going to immediately think back to their previous education. So for you, you have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So how did the master's degree differ from the bachelor's experience? And same question for Dr. Freeman, when you went back to get your PhD, how was that different from the master's?
But I'm actually going to swing it back to Dr. Freeman just to see how long did it take you from start to your bachelor's to your doctorate? What was the time in review, like your process first? Because mine is a little interesting, which my mom is probably, if she's listening, she's laughing her head off right now.
So great, great opportunity to tell my very, I guess you could say, exciting, but to a certain extent, sad story as well. So for me, I got my bachelor's in 2007 it was a Bachelor of Arts in Leadership. And I did a Bachelor of Arts instead of a Bachelor of Science because there's 2 less math classes. So that was my motivation to get the BA instead of the BS. But
how long did it take you? How long did it take you for your bachelor's?
4 years. 4 years
Okay.
for my bachelor's.
Okay. So you were already in the fire service. You started your bachelor's.
Started my bachelor's already in the fire service.
Okay. 4 years later.
2004 to 2007. I had been in the fire service for 3 years before I started, and but I was absolutely in love with the subject matter, which was leadership. Then 2008. So I took that momentum. Well, I guess let me back up slightly. High school. I graduated high school with a 2.5 GPA. I never did homework and I never studied for a test. So I've never considered myself to be studious to no extent whatsoever. Matter of fact, if it wasn't for my wife, who I started dating my junior year in high school, I may not have graduated because she did a lot of my homework for me. But that's why I married her.
Statute of limitations is fine. Yeah. You're going to keep the degree. Yeah. You're good.
Yeah. Other than her being a phenomenal person, she did my homework. She was phenomenal to this day. So 2008, I rolled right into my master's degree, and that was a Master of Science in Executive Fire Service Leadership. And the master's program, it was all about writing, and I was a good writer. So that was not problematic whatsoever. I actually enjoyed it. And that's where the trouble starts, because it gave me this false sense of security that, oh man, you rocked that master's degree. That was almost effortless. You'll be able to do a PhD, no problem. Yeah, I was totally wrong about that notion. The PhD, which I finished in 2022, I successfully defended my dissertation, which was titled "The Impact of Servant Leadership When Practiced by Career Fire Department Officers." It took me roughly 6 years to complete my PhD because I actually mentally quit at least twice with my doctorate because it was so tough. And there's a huge difference between a master's program and a terminal degree program, whether it's a PhD, a EDD, a DBA, a DSC. It was very, very challenging because you have the research aspect. And as you're going through the dissertation process, everything has to be perfect. It can't be close enough. It has to be perfect. And so I grew a lot in that experience, and I learned a lot. And what got me over the hump were my two daughters. I remember distinctly the family. We were in the living room watching TV, and I'm looking at my little girls. And this is after the second time I mentally quit. And I was telling myself the story: you don't need this PhD. You're good with a master's. You're well established in the fire service. You're getting keynotes. You're being invited to speak at conferences. You're good. You don't need it. And after I told myself that long enough, I kind of backed away and mentally quit. And I'm sitting on the couch with my family, and I'm looking at my two daughters. And I'm telling myself at that moment, how can you look at them and tell them, don't ever quit or give up on anything if you don't finish this doctorate? And that's all I needed. It was like a light switch went off, and I was guns a-blazing, and I buckled down. I woke up and killed it for 7 months. I was just going at it like gangbusters with research and polishing, the chapters I had already written, and was blessed enough and so fortunate enough to successfully defend. But it was certainly an intricate process that you really, really, really have to have the time, and you really have to have support from your family, because my wife did have to do more, just for the simple fact that although, of course, I was a busy chief running an organization, I also were doing other things, still doing speaking engagements and teaching as well. My wife stepped up to the plate and picked up my slack. And without her support, I would not have finished whatsoever. But my family was my motivation, and my family, they carried me across the finish line, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. There are times where you just don't want to do it anymore. I
Absolutely.
right. Like, just like anything, I think, whether fitness, burpees, whatever it might be, right. There's always those things you don't want to do. For me, it took me, the joke of my family is it takes a lot of people 19 years to go through school. And usually they have their PhD, like Dr. Freeman over there. At least for me now, it's took me 20, well, let's see. I started my undergrad in 1992. Finally got my degree in 2012. So that took a while. I just didn't want to finish school, or I didn't finish school. I got caught up in work and life, and then so I got my bachelor's in 2012, and then I went back after the boot from Dr. Freeman in 2 years ago, and then my master's was a lot. I was ready for it, and I knew that I wanted to pursue it. But there was a point, like Dr. Freeman said too, where I was 5 classes to go. I was traveling a lot and speaking. I had just spoke at with FRCE at the Rock in New York, and I was going to Orange County Fire speaking. And I thought, hey, this is great. I'd rather focus my energy there. And same thing. I have a niece and nephew that one's in college and one's in high school. I have a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and I thought, well, I couldn't look at them and say, stay in school, do your study and do your homework. Even my own crew, who I've been telling, hey, you should go back to school, at least get your undergraduate. Cause in my department, we do a great job of supporting that. And, you get a fairly substantial raise if you have your undergraduate. And then I turned to the internet a couple times, and Chief, we were talking about some of the people that we watch not on the Insta suck. We go to the YouTube usually, and I look for people that motivate, educate, and really try to give me some I just don't look for the pictures and the quick, like, oh, here. And I found Rick Rigsby, McCraven, and
Oh, yeah.
Simon Sinek. I mean, there's a lot of people that I look for a little bit for motivation, and you put those two things together, and just put it through. And actually, I didn't want to have Dr. Freeman on again and not have that master's, and also our friend Keith Pageant. And to me, I felt like I was going to let down 130 guests that we've had. So I went back. I took a semester off, and then I went back and I did 2 classes for my last couple of semesters and just hammered it out. Just very similar journey.
Outstanding.
Yep. But I think everyone you're going to come across that, because there's going to be a time where you're sick of papers, you're sick of discussions, you're sick of, right? I think that's where you got to find out why it's so important to you.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make as a company is about you, our customer. We wouldn't be where we are today without you, and we don't take that lightly. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck, and shop our family of brands, including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Fleer, and more. Now let's get back to the show.
Everyone's journey is different, right? It's
Definitely.
not necessarily going to look like, I started on this date and exactly 4 years later I graduated, or 2 years later. And I think your story also, Zam, shows like the power of mindset, right? Because, 20 years ago, you're in a different headspace going through your bachelor's program, right, than you were when you were ready to take on a master's degree, which sounds like you zipped through for the most part, right? It was a very different experience than the bachelor's. And that's okay. We all have, like, life happens, and sometimes you just got to roll with that. And
Yeah, I wouldn't say I
great.
zipped through it, but comparable to the 19 or 20 years it took me to get my undergrad, heck
Right.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, but there are so many lessons learned. And Janelle, you had a great question for me, and I'll ask Dr. Freeman, and I go back between Doctor and Chief because I think you're the only. Well, actually, I think we had Candace Ashby on. She's also a doctor and a chief too, but you're our first Doctor Chief, so I go
Yeah,
back
and
and forth.
feel free to call me Reggie too, Zam. Not a problem. Not a
Uh,
problem.
I
But to your
you've
point though, Zam, there are, if you look at the number of fire service professionals who have their terminal degree today versus 10 years ago, there's no comparison. It is absolutely phenomenal to see how many people we have in the fire service that have their doctorates. It's great.
see change can be positive. Right? We
Absolutely.
don't like change, but we don't want the way we are. But I think that goes back to the misfit statement that we started with. I believe we are not the misfits. I believe we are really the change agents, and that we're becoming the majority. I just think that there's just different perspectives on it, and with it, a lot of people ask me, they're like, so why did I want to go back? Number one, and then I actually put them back to this to our very first podcast. And I said, well, because this gentleman had a different mindset and really, conveyed that to me about how it can really make a difference in the fire service, not just my own life. But then they said, okay, so why? And then, what are the things that you would recommend or really that I learned from it? Like they always ask, like what top? I think, Janelle, what was your question? 5 things that I really learned from my education experience.
Yeah, about yourself too, not necessarily about entrepreneurship specifically, but the learning process and how you learn and then how you apply that in your day to day as a lieutenant. What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd defer to Chief first because I think we're going to be pretty similar to it.
So it's a phenomenal question. And, for me, as I mentioned earlier, I graduated high school with a 2.5. So I lacked academic confidence. And I realized it's because I never applied myself. So the intellectual curiosity that I've always had, I never really exercised it. And I knew I was passionate about being a firefighter. When I first got on the job, I put myself through fire officer 1 and 2. Later on, I got 3 and 4. I put myself through fire instructor 1 and 2 and a PA 1041. Put myself through smoke diver. Put myself through certified advanced rescue specialist, trench rescue tech, confined space rescue tech, hazmat tech, because I was passionate about serving and I didn't want to be the weakest link. And so going through those courses, I really started to gain confidence, because you have the written exam and then you have the practical exam to get, especially the specialty certifications, whether they through Pro Board or IFSAC. And so that really transcended into academia for me. I was like, well, you know what? You can do this. And what the critical point for me was actually at the academy and rookie school, to where my first several weeks, I was actually failing. And I had an instructor who pulled me to the side and said, Freeman, what's the deal? I know you're better than this. I know you should not have the GPA that you have in this academy. What's the problem? How are you studying? So I explained to him, I said, well, instructor, I'm reading every single page in the chapter. I promise you I'm studying. And then he cut me off. He said, you're reading every single page? I said, yes. He said, well, that's the problem. I said, has anyone not taught you how to study? No, sir. So he literally, that evening, 3 hours, we sat in the lobby of the dorm and he taught me how to study. After that, I finished with the second highest GPA in our recruit class, all because he took the time to teach me how to study. And so, that transcended into me taking other courses and being successful and learning, and then applying what I learned, of course, on the fire ground and during emergencies into academia. I finished my bachelor's with a 3.2. I finished my master's with a 4.0, and then, of course, my doctorate with a 4.0. But in the beginning, I lacked confidence from an academic standpoint, and that was holding me back. And you never know what you can accomplish until you step off of the ledge. If you step off of the ledge, tap into your intellectual curiosity, and number one, just have faith and confidence in yourself. Have faith and confidence in yourself, and you just might be surprised of the results that you see.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also shows we have to learn how to learn, and we have to learn
Absolutely.
how we as an individual learn, because some people learn by reading and writing things out. Some people learn by watching how-to videos or having someone explain something to them in an auditory way. And that's so powerful when you tap into that because, decades ago it was like everybody, here's your textbook, read this is your option, your one
That's
your
right.
one path. But now we all have the opportunity to learn and from on so many different platforms, different angles. Zam, what did you learn about your learning style?
I put down too, Chief. I mean, confidence. Same. You. It was I think it was a lack of confidence and to get started. And I said it was kind of your challenge that said what that's really what's going to hold you back. And I think it's very common for a lot of people that they're like, hey, I'm not a good writer. I'm not a good reader. I wasn't good in school. I I think, Chief, you said it best. Like that, you can't let that stop you. You have to just start. And now there's resources available. Like I didn't know what the hell APA was. I thought, oh, is this another firefighter? Like, right? Like APA
Right.
6. Now it's APA 7.
Yeah.
But you quickly learn, and Chief Laskas, and if someone's listening to this, they don't know APA, that's just basically the format they use for references and resources. And you can easily overcome that. There's a lot of resources on the internet that can kind of cheat a little bit for it and help you out with that.
The American Psychological Association. Yep.
Yep. It's the way they want you to list resources and references.
That's
I'm
right.
pretty sure ChatGPT can do that for everybody now too.
Yeah.
So
There's different things out there that you can utilize, but I think your lesson about how to study is really imperative because it's a skill. And so, one of the 5 things I would always say is I learned how to learn again. I
That's
learned
right.
how to take tests again. I learned how to write again. But with that, I also learned how to listen. I learned how to communicate my thoughts a lot better and then put them to paper. And for me, that's transferred to writing better reports. It's transferred to writing better reviews. And really, it's helped me connect, I think, to my crew and to people better. And then you add the confidence, I think, is the 4th thing that I really, really took from that. And it's just it's all these things that kind of come together. And I think the last thing, and I would reiterate what Chief said, is it's there really is no excuse that I could use, because if I tried, a lot of times in the fire service, we don't know how to fail, right? Firefighters, we would get a job done somehow, some way. So it's been, I was telling you about my crew and watching my crew now start to study. They're not going to fail because we all are helping each other now. We're all kind of into this.
Absolutely.
I would just like to reiterate that, just take the step. Because to me, it's been very rewarding, not only because I get to talk about it, but, I'll tell you the story. So we went out to a celebratory dinner and told the server, well, what's the big celebration? And, my dinner partners were like, well, this guy just graduated from college or got his master's at age 51. And it was a younger server. And she was like, what? Why would you, what made you go back? And so we just started explaining. And I said, well, part of a podcast and very influential leader in the fire service kind of just gave me a boot in the ass and said, what's stopping you? And so here we are. And so when the dinner ended, she brought this card back and everyone in the kitchen and all the servers signed it, said congratulations, because they thought it was pretty cool that an old guy like me would go back to school. So that was pretty neat. And I think that goes to show that a lot of us really value education and want to go back. And so, Chief, your message about just do it really hit home for me, and hopefully it hits home for some other people.
Without a doubt. I just want to add to that, Zam. You made a very good point as far as, we're always going to find a way as firefighters. And so the best analogy I can give is from a technical rescue standpoint, right? So I quickly fell in love with technical rescue disciplines, and rope rescue tech was something that I enjoyed teaching, but also the time that I had on the heavy rescue, I enjoyed my time on the heavy. Ambulance, that's our future in the fire service, and there's a necessity, being it's 75-80% of our total call volume. But outside of the engine company, the heavy rescue was my favorite. And so we are always building mechanical advantages, right? And there's multiple ways to build mechanical advantages. But as firefighters, we just ask ourselves two questions. Number one, is it safe? And number two, does it work? If the answer is yes to both of those, you go with the rig, you go with the build. And so the same thing applies to, if you want to do something, there's nothing stopping you other than yourself. Make the decision. First, think it through. Think about the pros, think about the cons, think about the obstacles. And when you see that wall, figure out if you're going to go through it, over it, around it, or under it. And you will accomplish your goal, guaranteed, if you make a commitment to yourself that you are going to finish. And that is a conscious decision that only you can make as an individual. It's the same principle we have in the fire service, whether you're building a mechanical advantage, or you have to make a pick, or you're making a push through that dark, hot hallway. It's the same thing. We're not going to fail. We're going to get the job done. Yeah. So we apply it every day for total strangers at times. We can also apply it to ourselves as it pertains to trying to obtain and accomplish our goals.
Yeah. Well, perfect analogy for what we believe in on the show. Right?
Absolutely.
Like find a way to get better. And it comes back to a very fitting question, Chief. You motivated me to get a little better. And I went back to school and learned. And, I think we always like to ask our guests, what are you doing to get better?
It's a great question. And for me, I consider myself a lifelong learner. And, for anyone who is in a position of authority, because I think we use the term, there's two terms we use very loosely in our society, but also especially in a fire service. Number one, that's accident. And number two, that's leader. So an accident, we call way too many things accidents, when if it's predictable, it's preventable. And if it's preventable, we can't call it an accident. It's an avoidable incident, right? Number one. Number two, if we're in a position of authority, that does not necessarily make us a leader. It takes action to exercise leadership. So you can be in a position of authority and be a poor leader, but a great manager, or you could be a great leader and a poor manager. So it's vice versa. So it's one of those things where you always have to practice leadership. And for me, I do that every single day. And I like to look at it from a perspective of our doctors and lawyers, right? Doctors practice medicine. It doesn't matter when they finish med school. Doesn't matter if they've been a practicing doctor for 1 year or 20. They're always practicing medicine. Same thing with lawyers. They practice law. So if doctors practice medicine, lawyers practice law, how come us as fire service leaders, how come we are not focused and honed in on practicing leadership? And when you practice leadership, number one, you're always focused on self-awareness, always looking to do better and be better. That's where emotional intelligence comes into play, having that high EQ or emotional quotient, but then also asking for that feedback. You know, in the work environment, no one knows how effective you are more than the people that you serve as being in the position of authority that you're in. And it's certainly okay to say, I don't know, or I'm sorry. And that's something else that we don't do enough of as far as people or persons in positions of authority. So with me, Zam, you know, practicing leadership and asking for that feedback, making sure that my team members know and understand that they're valued, because people don't care about what you know until they can feel how much you care. A slight twist to an age-old analogy that I like to use. And that feedback is very critical to one's development, whether it be personal or professional.
Yeah, great stuff. That could be a whole nother show right there. Janelle's writing it down, I hope. But I think the main messages that we wanted to hit home today is that you need to take action, and you helped me take action. So first and foremost, thank you. I appreciate it. It obviously resonated in my 5 brain cells that I have in my head, and here I am. I have my MBA, and so you are a big part of that. So thank you for coming back on the show. And Janelle, thanks for supporting that. Along the way too, you help keep me motivated on that by bringing in guests and calling me out a little bit about how's school going. And darn it, that means I got to finish it and complete it. We love your comments, so please keep them coming. You can email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. Let us know what you think of this episode. If you have thoughts for Chief Freeman, we can share them and forward them on to him. And wanted to thank you and thank everybody for listening, because the essence of the program and taking action means we learn something, we do something, and we share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for being here, Chief. Thanks for listening, everybody.